Hi everyone and welcome to Winging It, our new stitch project for 2022. I hope you've had a happy new year and a good Christmas and are ready to start 2022 full of enthusiasm and ready for a new beginning and a fresh start and maybe even a brand new hobby. I'm really excited about this project and I can't wait to see all the things that you come up with and the way our community is going to grow as we progress through the year. If you don't know what Winging It is, there's an introductory video on my YouTube channel or over on my Instagram account at Featherstitch House, so you can watch it and find out what the project's going to involve and what you need to do to take part. If you are already familiar with all that and are ready to go, grab your fabric and your needle and thread and your scissors and let's get stitching. Okay, so our first prompt for this year is black and white or monochrome. And so what I've got here is just a selection of all sorts of different threads and monochrome things that I've just pulled out of my stash. So I'll just take you around the table and show you what I've got. So first of all, I've got the obvious. I've got some just 6-strand embroidery thread here. I think this is a mixture of Anchor and DMC. I've got some silk thread that I bought from an Etsy seller. That is a dream to use actually, and they're just slightly different shades of grey. I've also got some pearl cottons over here. This is an 8, number 8 pearl cotton, so it's quite chunky. And I've also got here some thread that I got from a Sashiko kit that I bought, which is more matte than the pearl cotton. Pearl cotton's got a bit of a sheen to it. This is more matte and it adds just another texture. Then over here I've just got some vintage sewing threads. Now these are Silcos and I can't tell you how much I love sewing with these. Most of these came out of my grandma's sewing box when I inherited it. And so I've got some shades of white, some off-whites, and some greys, and I think there's a black there as well. These are just more just standard sewing cottons, but there's some quite nice warm greys in there. Then I've got some embellishments. I don't know how many of these I'm going to use. Oh sorry, there's just there's a couple more threads here. So these are both linen threads. This is a thicker weight one and this is a finer one. This is just a dream to sew with. I absolutely love it. And then we've got some silk threads here. These are machine silks. I don't think it's natural silk. They can be a little bit unruly. They've got a bit of a mind of their own, but they add quite a nice sheen to your work, and you can double them up. You can use them as a single strand. So embellishments wise, I've got some buttons here. So I've pulled out, I keep my buttons in jam jars. So I've pulled out my white buttons, my black buttons and my grey buttons. I've got some beads over here in different shades of black and white, and I've got a couple of silver ones in there as well. Again, I don't know how much of this I'll use. And these are quite cute. These are light bulb safety pins, so they work just like a safety pin, but they're an interesting shape. And so they look quite nice when you add them into your work. So I've got some black ones, white ones, and a few silver ones there. I think this one's going to be mostly thread though. So let's have a think about the prompt. So we did monochrome, but I also wanted to think about what New Year meant to me. So this is my planning for this prompt, and this is part of my creative process. I thought it would be interesting for you to see it and for me to share it. So I just wrote New Year in the middle of my page, and then I thought about all the things that New Year meant. So I've got celebrations, I've got a section on winter, I've got a section for reflection, and then down here I thought about New Year as a time for beginnings, and it's a time where we make resolutions and we get a sort of fresh start, and lots of us make plans for the new year, make resolutions, and so that's the way I went with this one. So I focused on making resolutions and having a clean slate, and so I just sort of sketched out some ideas. I thought of the idea of a chalkboard and having a clean slate, and I thought I would keep it simple. I wanted to just stick with our straight stitches. So I thought about the effect that you get when you write on a chalkboard and then rub it off, and you get those sort of greyish white swirls, and that combination of lots of different shades of grey and white and black. And so I thought what I'd do is make a piece that has got a sort of resolution, and then some sort of swirls around it that sort of mimic that chalkboard feel. So that's what I'm going to go with for this this piece for our first week. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of my creative process, just so that if you are a bit stuck, you can have a bit of a go and do a bit of a mind map on a piece of paper, think about lots of ideas, and just come up with a decision about which direction you're going to take it in. So I'm going to work on a dark grey piece of felt for this one, and I've marked out my 8x8 cm square. It's about 3 inches by 3 inches, but I've also allowed a 1 cm border, because felt can sometimes move a little bit, so can fabric, it's no different really. It can sometimes move a little bit as you're sewing and just pull out of shape a little bit, so I just wanted to give myself some wriggle room just in case. So what I'm going to do to start off with is just sketch out my design, and I've got my trusty heat erasable pen here. This is a friction pen. It's not a friction pen, it's a friction pen body with a white refill. I don't like buying new pens all the time, so I just get refills and pop them in. So it's got a white refill in it, and I really like working with these because they stay for the duration of your project, and then with just a tap of a cool iron you can get rid of the marks, so which you can't do with a pencil. So I'm just going to sort of sketch out. This is one of those pens where it takes a while, for you have to wait for the ink to develop, so you might not see it at first, but as it dries it gets stronger. So you might not be able to see that. I can see it well enough to sew through it. So I'm going to do that lettering in a white thread. I think I'm going to go with a white pearl cotton, and I might change it up a little bit as I go. While we're here, I'll just show you a quilter's knot, because this is how I secure my thread. Some people are very precious about not knotting on embroidery, but if you're working with felt, you'll find that if you don't do a knot, the thread will just pull through, and you need to make your knot quite big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the thread against my finger, put the needle against the thread right at the end of the thread, and then I'm going to wrap my thread around twice and pinch that wrap against the needle, and then I'm going to push the needle through. And sometimes I like to loop the thread around my fingers just to stop it tangling up. And pinching all the time, I'm just going to pull my thread through my fingers, and you're left with a little knot on the end there. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so hopefully you've watched my tutorial video about straight stitches. So I'm going to just use back stitch for this lettering. So I'll come back when I've stitched it all in. So I'm going to just, I'll start off, I'll do the letter B for you. So I'm starting a little bit down from where my letter B starts, and then I'm gonna just backstitch my way along. Okay, so I've got my letter B, so I'm gonna sew in the rest of the letters. I might redo that a little bit. I'm sewing without my glasses, so I just might even that up a little bit. I'm going to try not to do a huge amount of unpicking as I'm doing these though, because I think we're just playing and experimenting and trying out different styles, and so we'll just go for it and see how we get on. So when I've got my lettering in, I'll come back and I'll tell you how I'm going to embellish it and decorate it a little bit. So I've backstitched in all my letters, and what I've tried to do is make it look a little bit sort of naive in style and have the letters look a little bit uneven. Now, I'm not very good at that. I'm a bit of a neat freak, and so I tend towards being quite precise, and that's not always what you want. And so I don't know how successful I've been, but we all have our strengths and weaknesses. So what I've got is my sort of, I suppose you could call it an affirmation for 2021, which is be kinder to yourself. So that's something for me. If you want to do something similar, have a think about what you need to remind yourself of as the year progresses, and you can put something like that on. I'm going to keep it quite simple, but what I'm going to do is some swirls around the edges. So I'll show you what I mean in a second, but I'm just going to draw in some curved lines just to give me a bit of a guide. So let me just show you the sort of thing that I mean. What I've got here is just the sort of thing that I mean. This is fairly free stitching, and I don't know how well you'll pick up the different shades on the camera, but I've got just lines overlapping each other in different weights and types of thread just to get a different effect. And I've just started doing a little bit of seed stitching down here to add a bit of texture. I'll go over that with another colour in a little while. So that's what I'm going to do. This is nearly all running stitch. I did the black line in back stitch, so I'm just going to add in some swirls and patterns like that, just to sort of mimic the idea of chalk that's been wiped around as the board has been cleaned. It won't look photographic, but it'll be reminiscent of that sort of thing. So I'm just going to running stitch along the lines, and again, I'm not going to make you watch me sew for ages and ages. I'll just give you the idea of what I'm doing. So I'm just following my swirly line, and I think I'm going to go for a shinier thread. So if I grab this warm grey, I've not used this one before, so it can sometimes be tricky to know where the thread end is. I can see it, but there we go. So this thread I sort of have a love-hate relationship with, because it has a mind of its own and it can be tricky to control sometimes, but it gives a lovely sheen to your work. So I'm going to just stitch alongside the line that I've just done. Might make my stitches a little bit smaller for this thread. You can make them all the same size, but we're just playing around. Just thought I'd see what it looked like if the stitches were smaller. So again, just running stitch, nothing complicated. And if you find your threads very fine, you could double this up to get a thicker finish. What I'm going to do is do a second line of this next to the first. So I'm just going to build up those slow stitched running stitch lines around this swirl, and I'm not going to be too concerned about whether the swirl is completely even or whether the lines are absolutely parallel. I'm just getting used to free stitching and just making it up as I'm going along, winging it if you like. Okay, so now I'm just going to work back the way I came, and what I'm going to try and do is keep this line of stitches the same as the one that I've just done. So I'm going to try and make sure the stitches sit next to each other, because that way this thread, these lines of stitches will be more visible and easier to see. Now as you're stitching, just some things to look out for. So I'm thinking that could do with a little bit of white, so it could do with something a lot brighter, but I don't really want another thick thread, so I think I'm just going to use some of this vintage Silco thread. It's just sewing thread. As sewing threads go, it's quite thick and incredibly strong, so it's just a lovely weight of thread to go with. So I'm just going to the other side of that grey pearl cotton that I started with. So you get the idea. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to fill the space all around the words with just running stitch swirls like that, and I'm going to add in a little bit of seed stitch. So I'm going to get on with that, and then I'll come back when I've put in all those swirls and embellishments. Okay, so this is my finished piece for this week. Let me see if I can just zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. So you can see I've got my lettering in there, and I've done my swirls in different weights and types of thread, so that I've got a bit of a mixture there. It's really simple this week. I've actually only used back stitch and running stitch all the way through, with the exception of one tiny French knot, which if you know how to do French knots, then great, and if you don't, we'll come to that in a later session. But I can't wait to see what you come up with. Do post your work on Instagram or Facebook. If you use the hashtag FSHWingingIt1, we'll be able to see all of our monochrome prompts for this week. So I hope you enjoy having a bit of a stitch and creating something unique to you. By all means, use this idea or do something completely different. And I'll see you again next week. Happy crafting, and I'll see you soon. Bye.